Mark Mansell is an employment lawyer and partner at Allen Overy, joins me in the studio now. And I suppose, Mark, we've discussed this many times about banks facing lower revenues, higher costs after raising the base salary of their investment bankers. Has that turned out to be a mistake now?
Well, I'm not sure it has turned out to be a mistake. It's something which the FSA required, so more of a balance between fixed compensation and bonuses. If you look at the reason for banks reducing headcount, it's because they have overcapacity rather than because their base salaries are too low.
And are we likely to see then more job cuts in the next few months going forward simply because it starts to get too complicated from a contractual legal point of view to start messing with people's salaries?
I think it's possible, but I think if you do see more job cuts, it's because the requirement for people to actually work is reduced rather than issues with base salary. Certainly cutting base salaries is a way of addressing some of the fixed costs, but the problem that you have is you can only do that with employees' agreement. Now, if you do it with one or two individuals, that's possible, but if you're looking at a large group of employees, it's much more difficult to do legally.
And just how complicated is it, say, under UK employment law, for example, to cut salaries? Because banks can ask employees to perhaps accept a pay cut, but they certainly can't impose it on them, can they?
That's absolutely right. You can ask employees to accept a pay cut. If they accept it, then there's no problem. If the employee says no, then the only way you can force it through is to dismiss them and offer a new contract. Now, that's not great legally, but it's also a disaster from an employee relations perspective.
So how damaging could that be from a PR perspective as well, with investors and shareholders?
Well, let's say you had a group of, 2,000 employees and 350 were unwilling to accept. You then find yourself dismissing potentially 350 people. You then have to go out and try and recruit people to replace them. They're released, they're out of the market, they're joining your competitors. So it could be very damaging indeed, I think.
So now that they've raised the base salaries, that is irreversible. There's nothing they can do to change that. What are their options?
Well, it's irreversible without their agreement. I think there are a couple of options. One is what the banks are doing in terms of reducing headcount, which in many ways I think is a better way of doing it, because you're actually ensuring that you have the right number of people for particular areas of your business. The other way is reducing discretionary comp. I mean, if you look at, say, a managing director, even with the increases that they've seen to their base salaries, their discretionary compensation is still the bulk of the remuneration they receive in each particular year. So you can reduce that.
And I'm just curious about the actual process, because any firm looking to reduce the salaries of more than 20 people, as you say, they need to undergo a 90-day consultation process. That could, I mean, speaking about PR, that could reflect badly on the bank as well, couldn't it? Absolutely,
and you need to, if you do go through that consultation process, you need to elect employee representatives. That can be hugely disruptive. And then even when you've gone through that process, you still have to have their agreement. If you don't, then it's a forced dismissal, which brings about the potential for unfair dismissal claims. It could mean that individuals could be released in some way for their restrictive covenants. Could be a big issue.
Mark Mansell, partner at law firm Allen Overy, thank you very much for joining us.